Hi, everyone. I'm Lou Spisto, the executive director and producer for Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles. And I am delighted to share lots of information about GMCLA. So if you want to hear more about us, listen to this interview. Experiencing performing arts, or frankly, any art form live, is essential to build community and to have community. And I think that's one of the reasons GMCLA has been so important to this region, to Los Angeles, to the country for the past 45 years. We bring together a community. We can call it the LGBTQ plus community, but it's really much broader than that. It's a community of people who want to celebrate what we do, our music, and come together and be together. And there's no way to experience that unless you're in, quote unquote, in the room together, in the theater together. And as great as TV and film, and we all adore film, it's a very different medium. But, during the pandemic, we all experienced having to put our programming on the streaming platforms, which is great. And it's a great way to expand audience, but it does not replace the feeling of being together and experiencing something live. Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles is about beautiful music and powerful community. And that's what we say. That is our slogan. And it's not an empty slogan. It's very meaningful because we can affirm our lives. One can say we're about, gay men, but we're about much more than that. We're about music, bringing people together, music, helping express who we are. The very fact that gay men, and we have non-binary folks and trans folks and other people in our chorus today, which is fantastic. And we've had straight folks in the chorus. We accept everyone in the chorus. But the fact that primarily as an organization, we are a gay organization, the fact that we are coming together and being on stage and singing in a public space has always been an identifying wonderful thing about this organization. And it is great for the soul because it can reach people and it can kind of connect us in a way. When we perform for high schools, I really do believe that, and I don't believe this because it's something that I've, thought, it's something that I've been told, it's something that teachers and students have said, it's transformative. We can transform lives. We take for granted today, especially in Los Angeles, we live in this wonderful world where we're open and accepting. But music, bringing people together, first and foremost, it has to be great music. And music always reaches the soul. Music is something that, if it's done well, and sometimes even if it's not done very well, it's an exciting feeling to connect. I read once where, maybe in the 1980s, I read that music is more important to human life than many other things. It is right up there with food, water. Music is essential to our lives, the experience of sound. And when we come together, and when 200 singers come together on stage, as we have with our chorus, we'll be 190 on stage for our concerts coming up. It's a feeling that you cannot describe, that you cannot get in any other fashion or form. It's just incredible. Well, I heard about the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles when I was working. I was the executive director for the Pacific Symphony in Orange County. And I, through a friend of mine, who was at that time on the board of the Gay Men's Chorus, I was introduced to the chorus. I came up to LA. I was not living in LA. I was living in Irvine. I came up to LA to see them. And I think that they were at the Wiltern Theater. This was in the 90s. And I met John Bailey, who was the conductor, artistic director at that time. And John and I became friends through our mutual friend, Don Pattinson. And I just fell in love with what they were doing on stage. I love music. John was and still is a consummate musician, and he was able to bring a volunteer chorus together and make them sound absolutely beautiful. And the programming was more decidedly classical than perhaps we do today, but he also added a bit of Broadway and a bit of contemporary. So that's when I first became involved. I've been involved as a professional with nonprofits my entire life. I've also worked in commercial theater on Broadway, and I've done some other film projects and such more recently. But the majority of my career has been as an advocate or as a manager, as an administrator in the nonprofit performing arts world. I got to know Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles again back in 2015 when I moved to Los Angeles, and the person who was then the executive director introduced me and asked me to be on the board of directors. And I was on the board for about 2.5 years. And I left the board to go do a couple of other things I was focusing on another board and a couple of other things. And then I was asked to come in 2019 to step in on an interim basis while the chorus was kind of rebuilding. There were some issues that made the chorus kind of propel it into a new direction. And they asked, knowing that I had been involved with managing nonprofits. I had not expected to do this. This was not in the game plan. This was not in my, this was not in my vision. But I got involved with the chorus for a very short time, and then they asked me to stay on. And I have been, and it's been interesting because we first had to rebuild organizationally in middle of 19, and we did very well. And we brought on this phenomenal music director, Ernest Harrison, at the end of 19. But I hadn't intended to stay, and I've just fallen in love with it. And through the pandemic, which was another reason why all of us in the performing arts faced this particular challenge, which has never been seen before, and hopefully never again. So with that, and with the kind of change in the dynamic of what we were able to do, and then another kind of rethink of the organization, I stayed on through that. And then since the pandemic, I'm happy to say that we've been able to build back most of, certainly in terms of service, we're doing even more than we've done before. In terms of music and performances, we're at the level on our main stage, and we do much more in the community than we did pre-pandemic. And our ticket sales are very good. They are strong. I would say that in terms of individual donations, we still are not at the place that we were pre-pandemic. But we've been doing very well financially. We've been able to balance our budgets, working within the scope of what we can do while building out artistically. And I'm really happy to say in the education and community outreach area, we're doing quite a bit, and I'm very proud of that. Most people know GMCLA as this fabulous, 200-person choir that stands on stage throughout the year at major venues, as we have for 45 years, at the Music Center, at Walt Disney Concert Hall, at the Saban Theater, at the Alex Theater, at Royce Hall. We've been to Carnegie Hall. We've been throughout Europe. Most people know this great, big, incredibly exciting, dynamic performance structure, if you will. And that's the majority of what we do in terms of what we call the tentpole productions, the season and the paid performances. But we have an enormous amount of programming that goes into schools, specifically the high schools, and in some cases the middle schools. We've been doing this for about a dozen years. We call it the Alive Music Project. We go into a school, we perform for an assembly, but as important as the performance is, we have an opportunity to have our members, the singers in the chorus, we use the term members because they are our members. The singers will take perhaps 4 to 6 of them, and they will speak about their lives from the stage, specifically in a way that can relate to young people, about coming out, about being bullied, about challenges they faced. We never are in a situation where we're proselytizing or advocating or saying this is what you should. We just talk about who we are, and by virtue of being on that stage, for the majority of the kids, that's just a great musical performance, and they get to know what being gay is about. And perhaps this is an experience they haven't had or an exposure they haven't had. And for those kids who might be gay or who might be not necessarily fitting the mold for whatever reason, this is a safe space for them. And we have heard from teachers and students. I actually interviewed a young man who was about 28 years old for a position here about a year ago. And he said, my parents knew that when I was a kid in high school, you guys came to my school. He said, and that changed my life. He said, I was able to kind of find myself and talk to my parents. We get, letters like this. And again, we're not pushing a lifestyle. We're not doing anything other than singing and saying this is who we are. So we've done that so successfully, and we've reached about 85,000 students over this past number of years. And we're fortunate in LA that the schools are open to us. We do, we survey the school before, we survey the school after. We want to know, have we made an impact and what can we do better? All of that kind of thing. We've also been involved with the Arts for Healing Justice Network, which has been very, very powerful. And it's a very intense program where we have in the past gone into incarceration facilities. We work with, incarcerated youth, juvenile detention centers, that kind of thing. We haven't done that since the pandemic because of certain situations and requirements and the change in the way that works. But we continue, our music director, who is an educator himself, continues to go into these facilities and do lectures or workshops or master classes. And he's working with Arts for Healing Justice a lot. And we're thrilled about that. And he's on the board of that organization. We also, in addition to these programs for young people, we do an enormous amount of free programming in the school, in parks, in recreation centers, in churches, in hospitals, in community centers. In addition to, of course, the Pride parades. We're very busy in June. Every town in this greater wonderful area, seems to have a Pride parade. We have the West Hollywood Pride Parade. We have the Los Angeles Pride Parade now. We have other areas. We've gone into community parks in Baldwin Hills. We've gone down to the South Bay. We've gone to the Valley a lot. We've done a lot of social justice advocacy support. For instance, during the Women's March movements of the last few years, going back many years, but certainly a year and a half ago, when obviously Roe versus Wade was up for consideration, and we all know how that ultimately went. But we marched and we sang on the steps of the LA City Hall. And we support our sisters. That's really been important to us all these years. We support causes wherever we can, where people are seeking justice, seeking equality, seeking recognition. And the chorus is, vastly more diverse than we were, when we started as part of the March on Washington in the late 70s, which we are an outgrowth of that, as is San Francisco and New York. The biggest chorus is we began as an outgrowth of the gay liberation movement, which was a very specific thing at a very specific time. And then, moving past gay liberation, of course, we went right into the horrible 15 years that was the height of the AIDS crisis. And we were fighting for lives and funding and acknowledgement of this. And the story of what happened in the 80s with this. And so GMCLA was as often at memorial services and candlelight vigils and, marches for federal support of healthcare. So that was a big period. And then in the 90s, a lot of things happened. Obviously Matthew Shepard was another touchstone in our world, and things that happened at that period of what was happening in terms of the horrors there. And then, of course, in the 2000s, the movement was for marriage equality, and we marched and we sang and we created connection. And unfortunately, in the last number of years, we have marched and we have rallied after horrible events like the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. And, it's funny because a couple of years ago, I said to one of my colleagues, I think it was maybe 4 years ago, I said, gee, I wonder if there'll become a time when we don't need to exist from a social perspective. I mean, we'll always need to exist from a musical perspective, but will there be a time when the fight for acceptance or the fight against bullying or the fight against whatever this is, movement, of course, we know what this is, but I'm speaking metaphorically. Is this ending? There's a world of acceptance? And I don't think that's necessarily, and I'm really actually sorry to say that, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that ultimately we see in our own backyard. I mean, in Glendale, we had parents, protesting that the school was, having a pride booth or a pride is teaching about pride during the month of June. We see in our own backyard, and I'm not trying to pick on Glendale because great people in Glendale, but I'm not trying to go against anyone, or we're not trying to. We're just trying to stand up for ourselves. And you would think that by now in LA, and let's not talk about the rest of the country and what's happening in other states. The states, I don't need to name them, and you know what's happening with women's rights and LGBT rights. And of course, today, that extends more broadly to trans rights. And we're not where we should be. We're blessed here in Southern California, for the most part, to be in a fantastic place. So part of our singing is simply to say, we're here. Don't ignore us. Don't forget us. But again, I'm a producer. I'm a performing arts guy. I'm a theater guy. We've got to give you a great show. When we stand up there, whether it's in whether we're singing at the Lakers, which we did recently, or at a memorial like we did recently for the incredible Roz Wyman, the city council legend, or we're going to be this week, we're going to be tomorrow, we're going to be at 2 World AIDS Day events. We're going to be singing at the Minority AIDS Project World AIDS Day commemoration, and we're going to be singing at USC for their unveiling of the quilt, the AIDS quilt. The incredible AIDS quilt is coming back to LA for the first time in many years. So we're going to be singing for that. So we're going to be in both places. We're going to split the chorus, and we're going to put some people here. But we've got to be good. Whenever we sing, we want to be as wonderful and beautiful as we can possibly be. When people come to a Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles concert, I want them to feel the joy, the love, the connection, not only to the music and to what we are on stage and who we are, but to each other. I've spent a lifetime going to performing arts and theater. I started when I was 11 years old. I'm from New York City. My mom, love her and thank her for taking me when I was 11 to my first Broadway show. And I've gone to concerts since that time. Like so many people, I've probably been to thousands of live events, performing arts, and I love the arts. But I don't think I experience community at anything else, including great concerts in Broadway and symphonic things and opera. I don't think I experience any kind of community as much as I do when I'm at a GMCLA concert. People are there for each other. They're there for us. There's nothing like that experience. So I want people to feel the connection to each other. We're in such a different place now. I mean, post-pandemic, and this has been coming for a long time. And I'm not trying to rag on social media or the phone. All of that is great. I love the phone. We all love the phone. But the fact of the matter is, being together in one space is critically important for everything that we are and for everyone. So when we come together, have this great music, fun, joy, it's a lot of heart. It's a lot of love. It's sometimes a bit of, some tears. I think that's what we want to experience. And I think that's what people do experience. So I'm hoping we can continue to bring them that, the joy and the connectivity and the community. When I'm watching and listening to the chorus, I must be completely candid and truthful and straightforward and a little bit, in the weeds here. On one level, when we're rehearsing and when we get into dress rehearsal, I'm listening for to make sure that the sound is coming across. As a producer, one of the most important things we can offer is a quality experience. And so I'm not responsible for making sure that they hit every note. That's our music director. But I want to make sure that we're presenting that quality and that the sound and very often in most situations, there are very few halls that we can be in that don't require some amplification or reinforcement of the sound. So I'm listening for that. I'm listening for, is this going to work sonically? Is the audience going to get it? I'm listening for clarity. I'm listening for an understanding of the lyrics. I'm listening for an audience, because if you can't understand what's being sung, it's hard to connect to it. And I know I love opera and I read the subtitles, so that helps. In opera, most opera we know for a century or more, we know what that is when we're going. But I'm really excited for the chorus performance to be as great as it can be. And then I'm looking for the chorus when I'm listening or looking at the chorus. I want them to be having a good time. I want to see that they're into it. If they're into it, and they are, the audience is going to be into it. If they're having a good time, the audience is going to be having a good time. If they believe what they're singing or presenting, the audience will believe it. If their heart is there, the audience's heart is there and will be captured. So that's what I'm really looking for when I'm listening and working with the chorus to develop a performance. I believe with all my heart that the SoCal audience must experience the kind of love and the kind of joy and the kind of music we can deliver. If they have not, they're missing something. And I understand that's a hyperbole, that's hucksterism, that sounds like an oversell, but there's nothing I can say on this video or one can get from watching one of our fabulous YouTube videos that can compete with the experience they will have. They must experience it at least once. Give it a shot. They may love it. They may say, hey, it's the best thing I've ever done. I'm going to come every time. Or they may say, I like that music. And when they have music like that, I'll come again. Or they may say, okay, that's great. I've done it. I don't need to do it again. But I think they must give this experience. They owe it to themselves to experience. And I hope the people who are watching me and who've lasted through this video to watch what I have to say or listen to what I have to say will come to our concerts, particularly the ones coming up, GMCLA.org. We'd love to have you, and I think you'll love it. Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles deserves people's support through donations, contributions, gifts, whatever you might call it. And we are a nonprofit. We, of course, all of our gifts that we accept, they're tax deductible to the donor. But we deserve support because no organization does what we do. And no organization has done what we do for the last 45 years. Without GMCLA in this community, there would be a void of the kind of service, a void of the kind of representation, a void of the kind of stand up and sing for us and others, a void of what we can do. We're incredible music. As I've said, we offer this incredible theatrical performance, musical, sonic experience. But what we do in the schools, what we do for our allies and for towns and municipalities and hospitals and all sorts of places, the service that we provide through, and this is really important, through the volunteerism of our 200 member singers who donate their time, who give of their time. There are very few places in this greater LA area where such a large and well-known and established organization is presented or presents a group of volunteers who sing or who perform at the level we do. I mean, it's gorgeous music, and they're giving their time and they're acting on behalf of their love for the community. So I think we deserve the support. You cannot get a better organization. They're certainly as good, and they're certainly bigger. And we are extremely, extremely careful with our funds fiscally. We are very strong. The last 5 years, we have not had deficits, and I don't mean to be so technical, but sometimes people say, "Yeah, I'm going to give my money, and are they going to blow it, or are they good with the money, and are they viable? Are they going forward?" Organization, absolutely, 100%, very strong organizationally. We have a committed board, and we have 200 of the greatest people in the world that are giving. I calculated it; it's about 1,500 hours a year that each individual gives freely to be in this chorus. So I think that deserves support. In addition to the kids that are getting life-changing experiences and the communities who are seeing our music for free on a regular basis. I would just say a great way to get involved with a chorus right now, make a donation. You can visit gmcla.org, and we are certainly very, very grateful and appreciate anything people can donate, small or large. Hi, everyone. I'm Lou Spisto. I am the executive director and producer for Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles. And we hope you get involved with the chorus by coming to any of our concerts this season or donating. You can find out about GMCLA's concerts, schedule, free events, and how to donate and get involved at gmcla.org.